Happy Friday, boys and girls. It is Friday, April the 3rd. I cannot believe it, but it means one day closer to possibly seeing you guys again. I sure hope so, because I miss you terribly. Okay, well, we are still in Because of Winn-Dixie. We are looking at chapter 14 today, but before we dive in, let's think about what we talked about yesterday. Remember that Winn-Dixie had that whole episode with the thunderstorm and the lightning and everything. It was kind of crazy. Then we had her, Opal, going to work at the pet store, and the owner there was playing the guitar, and all the animals were nice and quiet. That was kind of cool. And then she went and visited with Gloria Dump, and they were telling some stories, and Gloria was suggesting that maybe she become friends with the two friends, Dunlap and Stevie Dewberry, and she wasn't having it. So let's pick up on chapter 14 and see what happens today. Sometimes I told Gloria the story Miss Franny Block had just told me, or I imitated Otis tapping his pointy-toed boots and playing for all the animals that always made her laugh. And sometimes I made up a story, and Gloria Dump would listen to it all the way through from beginning to end. She told me she used to love to read stories, but she couldn't anymore because her eyes were so bad. "Can't you get some really strong glasses?" I asked her. "Child," she said, "they don't make glasses strong enough for these eyes." One day when the storytelling was done, I decided to tell Gloria that Otis was a criminal. I thought maybe I should tell an adult about it, and Gloria was the best adult I knew. "Gloria," I said. She said back. "You know Otis?" "I don't know him, but I know what you tell me about him." "Well, he's a criminal. He's been in jail. Do you think I should be afraid of him?" "What for?" "I don't know. For doing bad things, I guess. For being in jail." "Child," said Gloria, "let me show you something." She got up out of her chair real slow and took hold of my arm. "Let's the two of us walk all the way to the back of this yard." Let's see what it is. "Okay," I said. We walked, and Winn-Dixie followed right behind us. It was a huge yard, and I had never been all the way back in it. When we got to a big old tree, we stopped. "Look at this tree," Gloria said. I looked up. There were bottles hanging from just about every branch. There were whiskey bottles and beer bottles and wine bottles, all tied on with a string, and some of them were clanking against each other and making a spooky kind of noise. Me and Winn-Dixie stood and stared at the tree, and the hair on the top of his head rose up a little bit, and he growled deep in his throat. Gloria Dump pointed her cane at that tree. "What you think about this tree?" I said, "I don't know. Why are all those bottles on it?" "To keep the ghosts away," Gloria said. "What ghosts?" "The ghosts of all the things I've done wrong." I looked at all the bottles on the tree. "You did that many things wrong?" I asked her. Said Gloria. "More than that." "But you're the nicest person I know," I told her. "Don't mean I haven't done bad things," she said. "There's whiskey bottles on there," I told her, "and beer bottles." "Child," said Gloria Dump, "I know that. I'm the one who put 'em there. I'm the one who drank what was in 'em." "My mama drank," I whispered. "I know it," Gloria Dump said. "The preacher says that sometimes she couldn't stop drinking." Said Gloria again. "That's the way it is for some folks. We get started and we can't get stopped." "Are you one of those people?" "Yes, ma'am, I am, but these days I don't drink nothing stronger than coffee." "Did the whiskey and beer and wine, did they make you do the bad things that are ghosts now?" "Some of them," said Gloria Dump. "Some of them I would have done anyway, with alcohol or without it, before I learned." "Learned what?" "Learn what is the most important thing." "Well, what's that?" I asked her. "It's different for everyone," she said. "You find out on your own. But in the meantime, you got to remember you can't always judge people by the things they've done. You got to judge them by what they are doing now. You judge Otis by the pretty music he plays and how kind he is to them animals, because that's all you know about him right now. All right?" "Yes, ma'am," I said. "And them Dewberry boys, you try not to judge them too harsh either, all right?" "All right," I said. "All right then," said Gloria Dump, and she turned and started walking away. Winn-Dixie nudged me with his wet nose and wagged his tail. When he saw I wasn't going, he trotted after Gloria. I stayed where I was, and I studied the tree. I wondered if my mama, wherever she was, had a tree full of bottles, and I wondered if I was a ghost to her, the same way she sometimes seemed like a ghost to me. That's interesting. Chapter 15. The Herman W. Block Memorial Library's air conditioning unit didn't work very good, and there was only one fan. And from the minute me and Winn-Dixie got in the library, he hogged it all. I bet he did. He lay right in front of it and wagged his tail and let it blow his fur all around. Some of his fur was pretty loose and blew right off of him like a dandelion puff. I worried about him hogging the fan, and I worried about the fan blowing him bald. But Miss Franny said not to worry about either thing, that Winn-Dixie could hog the fan if he wanted, and she had never in her life seen a dog made bald by a fan. Sometimes when Miss Franny was telling a story, she would have a fit. They were small fits, and they didn't last long, but what happened was she would forget what she was saying. She would stop and start to shake like a little leaf. And when that happened, Winn-Dixie would get up from the fan and sit right at Miss Franny Block's side. He would sit up tall, protecting her with his ears standing up straight on his head like soldiers. And when Miss Franny stopped shaking and started talking again, Winn-Dixie would lick her hand and lie back down in front of the fan. Whenever Miss Franny had one of her fits, it reminded me of Winn-Dixie in a thunderstorm. There were a lot of thunderstorms that summer, and I got real good at holding on to Winn-Dixie whenever they came. I held on to him and comforted him and whispered to him and rocked him, just the same way he tried to comfort Miss Franny when she had her fits. Only I held on to Winn-Dixie for another reason, too. I held on to him tight so he wouldn't run away. It all made me think about Gloria Dump. I wondered who comforted her when she heard those bottles knocking together, those ghosts chattering about the things she had done wrong. I wanted to comfort Gloria Dump, and I decided that the best way to do that would be to read her a book, read it to her loud enough to keep the ghosts away. And so I asked Miss Franny. I said, Miss Franny, I've got a grown-up friend whose eyes are going on her, and I would like to read her a book out loud. Do you have any suggestions? Suggestions? Miss Franny said. Yes, ma'am, I have suggestions. Of course I have suggestions. How about Gone with the Wind? Well, what's that about? I asked her. Why, said Miss Franny, it's a wonderful story about the Civil War. The Civil War? I said. Do not tell me you have never heard of the Civil War. Miss Franny Block looked like she was going to faint. She waved her hands in front of her face. I know about the Civil War, I told her. That was the war between the South and the North over slavery. Slavery, yes, said Miss Franny. It was also about states' rights and money. It was a terrible war. My great-grandfather fought in that war. He was just a boy. Your great-grandfather? Yes, ma'am, Litmus W. Block. Now there's a story. Winn-Dixie yawned real big and laid down on his side with a thump and a sigh, and I swear he knew that phrase, now there's a story, and he knew it meant we weren't going anywhere real soon. Go ahead and tell it to me, Miss Franny, I said, and I sat down cross-legged, kind of like me, next to Winn-Dixie. I pushed him and tried to get him to share the fan, but he pretended he was asleep, and he wouldn't move. I was all settled in and ready for a good story when the door banged, and pinch-faced Amanda Wilkinson came in. Wouldn't you know it? Winn-Dixie sat up and stared at her. He tried out a smile on her, but she didn't smile back, and so he lay down again. I'm ready for another book, Amanda said, slamming her book down on Miss Franny's desk. Well, said Miss Franny, maybe you wouldn't mind waiting. I'm telling India Opal a story about my great-grandfather. You are, of course, more than welcome to listen. It will be just 1 minute. Oh, Amanda sighed, a real big dramatic sigh, and stared past me. She pretended like she wasn't interested, but she was, I could tell. Come sit over here, said Miss Franny. I'll stand, thank you, said Amanda. Suit yourself, Miss Franny shrugged. Now, where was I? Oh, yes, Litmus W. Block. Chapter 16. Litmus W. Block was just a boy when the firing on Fort Sumter occurred, Miss Franny Block said as she started in on her story. Fort Sumter? I said. It was the firing on Fort Sumter that started the war, said Amanda. Okay, I said. I shrugged. Well, Litmus was 14 years old. He was strong and big, but he was still just a boy. His daddy, Artley W. Block, had already enlisted, and Litmus told his mama that he could not stand by and let the South get beat, and so he went to fight too. Miss Franny looked around the library, and then she whispered, Men and boys always want to fight. They are always looking for a reason to go to war. It's the saddest thing, and no history lesson will convince them differently. Anyway, Litmus went and enlisted. He lied about his age. Yes, ma'am, like I said, he was a big boy, and the army took him. And Litmus went off to war just like that, left behind his mother and 3 sisters. He went off to be a hero, but he soon found out the truth. Miss Franny closed her eyes and shook her head. What truth? I asked her. Why, that war is hell, Miss Franny said with her eyes still closed. Pure hell. Hell is a cuss word, said Amanda. I stole a look at her. Her face was pinched up even more than usual. Sorry, boys and girls. War, said Miss Franny with her eyes still closed, should be a cuss word, too. She shook her head and opened her eyes. She pointed at me and then she pointed at Amanda. You, neither of you can imagine. No, ma'am. Amanda and me said it exactly the same time. We looked real quick at each other and then back at Miss Franny. You cannot imagine. Litmus was hungry all the time, and he was covered with all manner of vermin, which are fleas and lice. And in the winter, he was so cold he thought for sure he would freeze to death. And in the summer, why, there's nothing worse than war in the summertime. It stinks so, and the only thing that made Litmus forget that he was hungry and itchy or hot and cold was that he was getting shot at. And he got shot at quite a bit. And he was nothing more than a child. Y'all, my Reagan is 13, okay? And Litmus is 14. So that is really scary to think that he was the age of my child. Like this, and no. Did he get killed? I asked Miss Franny. Good grief, said Amanda. She rolled her eyes. Now, Opal, Miss Franny said, I wouldn't be standing in this room telling this story if he was killed. I wouldn't exist. No, ma'am. He had to live, but he was a changed man. Yes, ma'am, a changed man. He walked back home when the war was over. He walked, y'all hear me, he walked from Virginia all the way back to Georgia. Now, you know from geography, you've got Virginia, you've got North Carolina, you've got South Carolina, and then you've got Georgia, okay? Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia. He walked. Nobody had a horse except for the Yankees. He walked. And when he got home, there was no home there. Where was it? I asked her. I didn't care if Amanda thought I was stupid. I wanted to know. Why, Miss Franny shouted so loud that Winn-Dixie and Amanda Wilkinson and me all jumped. The Yankees burned it. Yes, ma'am, burned it to the ground. Well, what about his sisters? Amanda asked. She moved around the desk and came and sat on the floor. She looked up at Miss Franny. What happened to them? Dead. Dead of typhoid fever. Oh, no, Amanda said in a real soft voice. And his mama? I whispered. Dead, too. And his father? Amanda asked. What happened to him? He died on the battlefield. Litmus was an orphan? I asked. Yes, ma'am, said Miss Franny Block. Litmus was an orphan. This is a sad story, I told Miss Franny. It sure is, said Amanda. I was amazed that she was agreeing with me about something. I'm not done yet, Miss Franny said. Winn-Dixie started to snore, and I nudged him with my foot to try to make him quit. I wanted to hear the rest of the story. It was important to me to know how and to hear how Litmus survived after losing everything he loved. Oh, gosh, boys and girls, we got to find out. Chapter 17. Well, Litmus came home from the war, said Miss Franny as she went on with her story, and found himself alone. And he sat down on what used to be the front step of his house, and he cried and cried. He cried just like a baby. He missed his mama, and he missed his daddy, and he missed his sisters, and he missed the boy he used to be. When he finally finished crying, he had the strangest sensation. He felt like he wanted something sweet. He wanted a piece of candy. He hadn't had a piece of candy in years, and it was right then that he made a decision. Yes, ma'am, Litmus W. Block figured the world was a sorry affair and that it had enough ugly things in it, and what he was going to do was concentrate on putting something sweet in it. He got up and started walking. He walked all the way to Florida. Okay, so he made it to Georgia, and now he's in Florida. And the whole time he was walking, he was planning. Planning what? I asked. Why, planning a candy factory. Did he build it? I asked. Of course he did. It's still standing out on Fairville Road. That old building, said Amanda. That big spooky one? It's not spooky, said Miss Franny. It was the birthplace of the family fortune. It was there that my great-grandfather manufactured the Litmus Lozenger, a candy that was famous the world over. I've never heard of it, said Amanda. Me neither, I said. Well, said Miss Franny, they aren't making it any more. The world, it seems, lost its appetite for litmus lozenges, but I still happen to have a few. She opened the top drawer of her desk. It was full of candy. She opened the drawer below that. It was full of candy, too. Miss Franny Block's whole desk was full of candy. Would you care for a litmus lozenge? She asked Amanda and me. Yes, please, said Amanda. Sure, I said. Can Winn-Dixie have one, too? I have never known a dog that cared for hard candy, said Miss Franny, but he is welcome to try one. Miss Franny gave Amanda one litmus lozenge and me two. I unwrapped one and held it out to Winn-Dixie. He sat up and sniffed it and wagged his tail and took the candy from between my fingers real gentle. He tried to chew on it, and when that didn't work, he just swallowed the whole thing in one big gulp. Then he wagged his tail at me and lay back down. I ate my litmus lozenge slow. It tasted good. It tasted like root beer and strawberry and something else I didn't have a name for, something that made me feel kind of sad. I looked over at Amanda. She was sucking on her candy and thinking hard. Do you like it? Miss Franny asked me. Yes, ma'am, I told her. What about you, Amanda? Do you like the litmus lozenge? Yes, ma'am, she said, but it makes me think of things I feel sad about. I wondered what in the world Amanda Wilkinson had to feel sad about. She wasn't new to town. She had a mama and a daddy. I'd seen them with her in church. There's a secret ingredient in there, Miss Franny said. I know it, I told her. I can taste it. What is it? Sorrow, Miss Franny said. Not everybody can taste it. Children especially seem to have a hard time knowing it's there. I taste it, I said. Me too, said Amanda. Well then, Miss Franny said, you've probably both had your share of sadness. I had to move away from Watley and leave all my friends, I said. That is one sadness I have had. And Dunlap and Stevie Dewberry are always picking on me. That's another sadness. And the biggest one, my biggest sadness, is that my mama left me when I was still small, and I can hardly remember her. I keep hoping I'll get to meet her and tell her some more stories. It makes me miss Carson, said Amanda. She sounded like she was going to cry. I gotta go. And she got up and almost ran out of the Herman W. Block Memorial Library. Who's Carson? I asked Miss Franny. She shook her head. Sorrow, she said. It is a sorrow-filled world. But how do you put that in a piece of candy? I asked her. How do you get that taste in there? That's the secret, she said. That's why Litmus made a fortune. He manufactured a piece of candy that tasted sweet and sad all at the same time. Can I have a piece to take to my friend Gloria Dump, and another one to Otis down at the Gertrude's Pets, and one for the preacher, and one for Sweetie Pie too? You may have as many as you want, said Miss Franny. So I stuffed my pockets full of litmus lozenges, and I thanked Miss Franny for her story, and I checked out Gone with the Wind, which was a very big book, and I told Winn-Dixie to get up, and the two of us left and went over to Gloria Dump's. I rode right past the Dewberry's house. Dunlap and Stevie were playing football in the front yard, and I was just getting ready to stick my tongue out at them. But then I thought about what Miss Franny said about war being hell, and I thought about what Gloria Dump said about not judging them too hard, and so I just waved instead. They stood and stared at me, but when I was almost all the way past, I saw Dunlap put his hand in the air and wave back. Hey, he hollered. Hey, Opal. I waved harder, and I thought about Amanda Wilkinson and how it was neat that she liked a good story the same as I did. And I wondered again, who was Carson? Okay, that is it for today, boys and girls. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. I hope you can get outside and play and enjoy the weekend. I will be checking all of your work on Google Classroom this weekend. I will upload everything on Monday for the next new week, and we will pick up on Chapter 18. We'll have this book finished next week, so yay! Love you lots. Bye.